I used to believe that family was the safest haven, but in that house, peace was only for Garrett, my older brother, the golden boy. They invested everything in for his future. As for me, I was just a faint shadow, a forgotten person. When I announced I was joining the army, they were only happy because at least I had a stable job. Disappearing into the military for 5 years was the way I chose to forget everything. Then, a surprising Christmas invitation pulled me back as if nothing had ever happened. They didn't know I was no longer the penniless boy I once was. I carried a secret powerful enough to shatter the world they had built. Can betrayal turn pain into strength? Can I rise up, break the cycle of the past, and get justice for myself? I'm Jasper Thorne, 31 years old. My job in the military is signal analysis, a fancy way of saying I find the truth in the chaos. I learned to listen to what wasn't being said, and over time, it became an instinct. Everything in my life in Denver, Colorado is scheduled down to the minute. My penthouse is always tidy. My uniform is perfectly ironed, and my daily plans are clear. But there's one file I intentionally sealed, put in the bottom drawer, and covered with 5 years of dust. My family. In Columbus, Ohio, I wasn't an analyst. I was just Garrett's shadow. My older brother. He was the star, the track athlete, my parents' golden boy. And me? I was a quiet presence, the son whose choice to join the military they saw as just a stable government job, a safe escape for someone unremarkable. The difference was so blatant it was laughable. Garrett got a sports car for his 16th birthday. I got an old bike. He was invested in for his future, while I was advised to find a safe path. At home, I was the noise no one wanted to hear. But in the military, I learned to decipher that very noise. So, on a Tuesday evening, when the phone on my desk vibrated, I paused slightly. The name Clara appeared on the screen. My cousin, the only one in that so-called family who had my new number. I let it ring for a while longer, as if to give myself time to prepare. Jasper? Clara's voice on the other end was a little hesitant. It's me. Is something wrong, Clara? I asked, my voice even. In my line of work, all information has to be straight to the point. She took a breath. Mom and Dad. Well, your aunt and uncle. They want you to come home for Christmas. I was silent. The room was so still I could hear the faint whistle of the wind outside the window. My eyes looked out at the distant Rocky Mountains, the sharp, silent, and steady peaks. Everything in my life was like that. Except for the place called home. It's been 5 years, I said. Not as a question, but as a statement of fact. Why now? I don't know, Clara said softly. They seem serious. They keep asking me. I knew it wasn't her fault. She was just the messenger. Thanks for letting me know, Clara. We ended the call. I didn't sit down. I stood there, looking at the pitch-black night reflected in the window pane. Going back felt like reopening an old file, full of dust, and the risk of toxic information leakage. It went against every rule I had set for my life. But in that silence, another thought arose, a cold and calculated thought. Maybe this was the opportunity, not to reconcile, not to forgive, but to end it. 5 years ago, I left like a ghost. This time, I would return as an observer. I picked up my phone and booked a flight to Columbus, Ohio. This wasn't a reunion. This was one final mission, to confront, to close the file. Permanently. The flight to Columbus only took a few hours, but in my head, it stretched on for a decade. I didn't look out the window. Instead, I watched the blurred reflections on the glass, letting memories resurface automatically, like old files being pulled up. I remembered the period of severe psychological distress when I was 15. Experts now call it depression. To me then, it was a black hole, an emptiness that swallowed everything. I tried to seek help once. Just once. I sat in the living room trying to explain to my mom. She was flipping through a magazine, not looking up. "You're just overly sensitive, Jasper," she said. Her voice indifferent. "Go outside and get some exercise. Don't just sit in your room." Dad was different. He patted my shoulder, a stiff pat. "Men have to be strong. Your brother doesn't have time to be sad. He has to practice." Garrett was throwing a football against the wall, creating a steady thump-thump, like a countdown of my patience. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. His existence was an answer in itself. Those days taught me one thing. Don't expect understanding from anyone, not even your parents. The only one who can save you is yourself. I started building defensive walls. Emotions became a variable to be controlled. Silence became the perfect camouflage. My decision to join the military wasn't impulsive. It was a calculated plan. The military environment was structured. With rules and clarity, everything was based on competence and performance, not on whether you were a golden boy or a shadow. When I announced it at dinner, Garrett burst out laughing. "Great," he said, chewing his steak. "At least you'll have a stable job." My parents didn't object. They just nodded, probably relieved to have solved the Jasper problem. To them, it was a safe escape for someone unremarkable. They didn't understand that for me, this wasn't an escape. This was a strategic repositioning. The plane rattled slightly, signaling its approach to landing. I gripped the armrest. The walls I had spent years building had to be strong now. The mission was about to begin. The rental car took me away from the Columbus airport, into the familiar suburbs. Everything seemed frozen in a layer of memory. The neatly trimmed lawns, the identical houses, and a fake silence. My parents' house hadn't changed either. It stood there, silent, its white paint stained in a few places. I turned off the engine, sat in the car for a few more seconds, reviewing the defensive walls in my mind. Before getting out, the doorbell rang. A few seconds later, the click of the lock. The door opened. My mom stood there, blinking a few times as if trying to identify a strange object. "Jasper, you're really back." She forced a smile, opening her arms to hug me. The hug lasted only 2 seconds, efficient, but without any warmth. "You look so different," she said, stepping back to observe. "It's been 5 years, Mom," I replied. Inside, the smell of old pine wood mixed with the scent of dried flowers in the bowl on the table. My dad came out of the living room. "Look at my son," he said cheerfully. "The army has made you so strong." It was a compliment, but it only focused on the outer shell. They didn't ask if I was well, how my job was, or if I was happy. They only commented on what their eyes saw. Then Garrett appeared loud, his footsteps heavy, his laughter overpowering the room. Look who decided to grace us with his presence. He slapped my shoulder a little too hard. "Still so serious, soldier?" I just nodded. After the short greeting, my mom glanced at my luggage. "Oh, Jasper, your old room is Garrett's gym now. You'll have to sleep on the sofa." She said it like announcing the weather. I looked at the old sofa in the corner of the room. "Yeah, that's fine," confirmed. An analytical voice rang in my head. My position in this house remained unchanged, temporary, and unimportant. That evening, Garrett was like a broadcasting machine, pacing the living room, talking about his startup plan, a groundbreaking platform that would change the game, the kind of words I usually heard in reports about a soon-to-burst bubble company. My parents listened, their eyes shining. "A genius," my dad exclaimed. "My son is a true genius." In my head, I had already run a preliminary risk analysis. Success probability, under 5%. But I didn't say anything. I just sat there, silent, observing. This play didn't need any more actors. I was just the audience. The next 24 hours passed in a familiar and exhausting trajectory. The sleep on the sofa was anything but comfortable. My back ached, but it was a tangible pain, much more bearable than the atmosphere in this house. The next morning, my mom passed by, asking me to clean up the leftover wrapping paper from the previous night. My dad asked a few polite questions about Denver, but his eyes were glued to the football game on television. Garrett was still the same as ever, loud, self-satisfied, and constantly talking about his startup plan to anyone who would listen. I existed among them like a shadow, just moving, nodding, and doing chores. At Christmas dinner, the house was packed with distant relatives whose names I couldn't remember. The clinking of forks and knives, the lively chatter. I sat in a corner of the table, as was my habit, choosing a position where I could see the whole room. All eyes, as usual, were on Garrett. He was at the top of his game, telling one story after another, each one embellished to glorify his intelligence and humor. My parents laughed along with every sentence, their eyes full of admiration. Then, after a short silence, Garrett turned to me. A mischievous smile slowly spread across his face. I knew that smile. It was a signal of an impending attack. "Hey, everyone," he said loudly, attracting the attention of the whole table. "Let me tell you a funny story about my soldier brother. Remember the time Jasper was locked out of the doghouse all night?" The table paused for a beat. Then a few people giggled. My dad burst out laughing. "Oh, I remember that." His face was as white as a ghost the next morning. Laughter spread across the room. They saw it as a harmless childhood prank. I was motionless. My face showed no expression. But inside, a heavy steel door slammed shut and locked forever. I remembered that night. It wasn't a warm summer night, but late autumn, and it was freezing cold. I was 13. Garrett had pushed me out and locked the back door. I banged on the door, calling, but the music inside drowned out everything. I had to huddle in the old doghouse, trembling with cold and fear, listening to the laughter coming from the warm house. There was nothing funny about a child shivering in the freezing night, with the laughter of the person called my brother coming from another world. Garrett was still laughing, delighted. "He's so stubborn," he added, as if granting a favor. Had to teach him a lesson. I slowly put my fork down, the gentle clink echoing on the porcelain plate. For a moment, the laughter stopped. All eyes were on me, waiting for a reaction. Maybe anger, maybe shame. But I just looked straight at Garrett. Not a word. Just a blank, cold look like that late autumn night. His smile faded. He frowned slightly, annoyed by my silence. I picked up my glass of water and took a sip. The play continued. But I had all the data I needed. This scar, they had just deepened it once more. And this time, it wouldn't be forgotten. After dinner, the atmosphere in the house seemed to return to normal, but I knew something had changed. My gaze had made Garrett uncomfortable. He no longer teased me, but deliberately ignored me. That was fine silence. Was the environment I preferred. That night, I lay on the sofa, my back aching, but my mind was completely awake. The laughter from dinner still echoed in my ears. I couldn't sleep. I just stared at the twinkling lights on the Christmas tree, organizing the facts and preparing for the final act of the play. The next morning, the house was noisy again. Garrett rushed down the stairs like a child, excited about the pile of presents under the tree. The play began. The sound of wrapping paper being torn. The fake exclamations. Garrett was the center of all attention. Then it was my parents' turn. They opened the gifts I had carefully chosen. A Swiss watch for my dad. A silk scarf for my mom. "Oh, Jasper, it's beautiful," my mom exclaimed, her voice tinged with surprise, as if she didn't expect me to have such taste. The gift boxes continued to be passed around. Gradually, The pile of presents under the tree dwindled, leaving only scattered pieces of wrapping paper on the floor. There was no gift box with my name on it. The room suddenly fell silent, an awkward but intentional silence. My mom suddenly slapped her forehead, performing a clumsy act. "Oh my God, Jasper," she cried out, her voice too loud. "I'm so sorry. We were so busy that we forgot." My dad scratched his head, his face showing fake remorse. "Really? I'm sorry, son." But Garrett didn't bother to act. He leaned back in his chair and burst out laughing, a gleeful, unconcealed laugh. "Just like old times," he said, staring at me. "But don't cry. You're a grown-up now." I looked at them. Mom was acting, Dad was playing along, and Garrett was enjoying his victory. They were expecting a reaction. Maybe hurt, maybe anger, or at least the silent resignation of the boy from all those years ago. But that boy wasn't here anymore. Instead, I just smiled, a calm, almost alien smile. That calmness confused them. "I won't cry," I said, my voice even and clear, cutting through the awkward silence. Then I bent down and reached into the backpack in the corner of the room. "Actually, I bought myself a gift this year." I pulled my hand out of the backpack, not holding a shiny wrapped gift box, but just a bunch of keys. I held them up. The shiny metal of the car key and the apartment access card caught the light from the Christmas tree, a cold glint. Garrett sneered, his voice sarcastic. "A rental car key? Big gift." "I didn't rent a car," I replied, looking him straight in the eye. "This is the key to my apartment." The room fell silent, but this time it was a completely different kind of silence. Stunned silence. My dad blinked, trying to process the information. "You bought an apartment?" "That's right. I finalized the paperwork last week." My mom frowned, her voice skeptical, as if questioning a ridiculous statement. "How can a soldier's salary afford a house in Denver? It's so expensive." That was the question I was waiting for. All eyes were on me. Their plan had gone off the rails, and now they were trying to figure out why. "I have an independent cybersecurity consulting company," I explained, my voice as calm as if I was reporting a mission. "The company is doing well. I recently completed a big security audit contract for an investment fund." Garrett sat up straight, the smile gone from his face. "A big contract? How big?" he asked, his voice somewhat sharp, as if I had just insulted him. I looked straight into Garrett's eyes, then swept my gaze over my parents, who were holding their breath. The after-tax profit from that contract was about $150,000. Silence. A silence so heavy you could hear a dust mite fall. I could see every reaction on their faces. Like data displayed on a radar screen, Garrett's mouth hung open, his self-satisfaction shattered like broken glass. My dad looked confused, like someone who had just stumbled into a story that didn't belong to him. But the most remarkable reaction was my mom's. The stunned expression quickly disappeared, replaced by a cold, calculating look. She stood up, a fake smile quickly appearing like a mask. "Oh, my darling." She came forward, her voice unbelievably sweet. "Why didn't you tell us sooner? We're so proud of you." She turned to my dad. "Did you hear that? Our Jasper is so talented." The play had moved to the second act. I knew exactly what their next roles would be. My mom's hug was just like the one when I first arrived, quick and cold. She pulled me to sit on the sofa, in the very spot where I had huddled the night before. "Son, you've worked so hard," she said, her hand still tightly gripping mine. It was an intimate gesture, but I could still feel the calculation in that grip. My dad sat down next to me, his face less confused, replaced by a look of excitement. "That's my son. I knew you would do something great." I didn't respond to the belated praise. I just sat there, silent, waiting. "Garrett," After a few moments of stunned silence, regained his fake confidence. He sat down in the chair opposite me, crossing his arms over his chest, acting like a business partner evaluating an opportunity. A consulting company. He nodded. Sounds decent. Security for an investment fund. Must be a lot of work, right? It depends, I replied curtly. There was no need for pretense anymore. My dad spoke first, probably on a subtle cue from my mom. Jasper, he began. You heard your brother talk about his business plan. It's a very potential platform. That's right, Garrett interjected immediately, as if on cue. This is a golden investment opportunity. You'll be one of the first investors, an angel investor. He smirked when he said that phrase. How much do you need? I asked directly, my voice devoid of emotion. $200,000 to get it started, Garrett said, his voice as casual as if ordering a meal. With the money you just made, that's just a small matter, right? Silence fell again, and they looked at me with expectant eyes. My mom's smile, my dad's encouraging face, and Garrett's self-satisfied look. This was the reason they called me back. I looked at each of them. My dad, who told me I had to be strong when I needed understanding. My mom, who saw my pain as just overly sensitive. And Garrett, who turned my childhood into a series of humiliations. I took a deep breath. Number, A, single word, sharp and firm. The smiles on their faces froze, then shattered. No? My mom snapped, her voice high-pitched, the sweet facade gone. What do you mean no? It means I won't give you the money, I said clearly. But we're family, my dad said, as if that was a magic charm to solve everything. Garrett jumped up, his face red. You're selfish. After everything the family has done for you. Family? I repeated. My voice even. Where was family when I had to find my own way? While you were given everything, where was family when I needed help and only got indifference? That's different, my mom yelled. We didn't have money back then. But you always had money for Garrett, I said, because he was the golden boy. Because he always had potential. Garrett pointed a finger at my face. You're my brother. That's right, I said, standing up to face him. My calmness seemed to infuriate him even more. I glanced at my mom, her face pale with anger. Then I looked at my dad, who was still trying to understand what was happening. In my mind, a memory flashed like an old film clip. Garrett had a car accident when he was 17 and needed an urgent blood transfusion. In the hospital, I accidentally saw his medical records. His blood type was O, while my dad's was AB+. Biologically, that was impossible. For years I suspected, thinking I was the adopted one. But later, the instinct of an analyst didn't allow me to ignore that inconsistency. I cut through the argument with a cold silence. I turned to look directly at my dad, the man who raised me but never truly saw me. My voice was chillingly calm. Dad, I just have one question. I paused, letting the silence fill the room. Don't you find it strange that you and Garrett don't look alike at all? Garrett froze, his anger turning into confusion. My dad was bewildered, blinking. But my mom, her face went ashen, all color drained away. She knew exactly what I was talking about. The room was engulfed in a thick, heavy silence. Heavier than any silence before. Time seemed to stop. The sound of the television next door, the whistling wind outside the window, all disappeared. Only the four of us remained, frozen in the moment of truth. Garrett looked at me, then at my mom, then back at me. The confusion on his face slowly turned into a vague fear. My dad was still bewildered, trying to connect the disparate pieces, but I only looked at my mom. She didn't look at me. Her eyes were fixed on the floor, as if the floor could swallow her right now. Her shoulders trembled, not from crying, but from the collapse of a lie she had nurtured for 30 years. I didn't say another word. It wasn't necessary. My mission was complete. I turned and walked toward the corner of the room where my backpack still lay. Every action was slow and deliberate. Jasper. Son, my dad stammered, but couldn't finish the sentence. I didn't turn back. I walked straight out the front door. No one stopped me. The play ended so abruptly that the actors were still standing stunned on the stage. I opened the door, letting the cold winter night air rush in. It was fresh. It was real. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. The click of the lock sounded like the final locking of a file drawer. I didn't walk toward the rental car, but walked aimlessly, just to breathe the air of freedom. A while later, I took out my phone. I opened my contacts. Mom, delete, block. Dad, delete, block. Garrett, delete, block. Each name, each binding thread was cut clean and efficiently. Only one name remained. Clara. I wasn't shaking off the past. I was putting an end to a play of deceit that had lasted for over 30 years. 6 months later, I was standing on the balcony of my apartment in Denver. The early summer sun shone down on the city, warm and bright. Life had changed a lot, and I was no longer alone. Owen put down the watering can and wrapped her arms around my waist from behind. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, her voice warm. I met her 3 months ago, a landscape architect who brought green and peace into my life. She had her own stories, and we understood each other without many explanations. I leaned my head on her shoulder, thinking about the future. Clara still calls occasionally, not to complain, just to check in. Through a few short words, I knew the house in Ohio was no longer the same. The truth had finally been exposed and destroyed everything. My dad had moved out. Garrett, without investment capital, was struggling with odd jobs. I didn't feel any satisfaction, just a deep sense of peace. I had returned the truth to my deceived father and freed myself from a burden I never deserved to carry. My consulting company was growing. My military career also opened up new opportunities. I had built my own empire, not with money, but with truth and competence. My phone vibrated. It was Clara. I smiled and answered. "Hi." My old family might still be weaving stories about the ingratitude and coldness of a soldier, but that no longer mattered. I was busy living my life, a life built from silence, pain, and an unbreakable iron will.